Hello, folks. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. I'm your host, Roy Bensby. This podcast is an opportunity for me to speak with some of the most interesting people I know, either with amazing talents or achievements or unbelievable life stories or just invaluable insights into areas which they have dedicated their lives to studying. I sit down with these amazing individuals from across the planet and I try to ask them questions that will hopefully help you, the listener, extract something valuable or learn something new or just hopefully get inspired by. You can find all the episodes for the podcast on all the major podcasting platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, Google, Overcast, iHeartRadio, literally all of them. It's there. If you love the show, if it adds value to your life in any way, shape, or form, please leave reviews on iTunes. It really helps grow the podcast. It puts it up there so more people can see it. You can also find all the episodes and everything else, all the information that's updated regularly on the website, which is roybensv.com, ROYBENTZVI.com. And you can sign up for updates as well. Also been updating the YouTube channel. So I've been uploading old episodes pretty much on a daily basis. So you can find it there. And in the future, I hope to make video podcasting as well. If that's something you guys want to check out and are interested in, please shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. And also make sure to check out the social media platforms, Instagram and Twitter. I post there daily. And lastly, if you guys want to support and help grow the podcast, please go to Buy Me a Coffee or Anchor or Patreon. It is an endeavor to grow this podcast and make it what it should be. And it takes a village. So I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. I see that there are literally listeners from all over the world in each and every country. So thank you to everyone and on to the show. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in for yet another episode on yet another week. And this week on the podcast, I have Jonathan Hillis. He is the creator of Creator Cabins. It is a community of remote cabins for remote workers in the Texas Hill Country. I think when I checked, it was about 45 minutes away from Austin. This beautiful place in the middle of essentially nowhere, but it's beautiful. You guys should go to Creator Cabins, go check it out. He's building a place where creators, entrepreneurs can come, get away from the hustle and bustle and still meet like-minded people. It's almost a mix. It's almost like essentially we work, we live, tiny house movement and digital nomad converging into one cute little hub in the middle of, I don't know if it's a desert, but it's definitely wilderness of Texas. And it's beautiful. It's I think a place to get some inspiration. Like I said, meet like-minded folks. And I love it. I think we're going to see more and more of these type of hubs pop up across the country, whether it's cities that want to incentivize people to come there and build it, or companies going around and building it, or entrepreneurs like John building these type of places, because it's a no-brainer essentially. Why not? You do not have to have physical proximity to your workspace anymore. So why not create these little mini havens all across the country where people can flourish and meet other people? So no-brainer, I think. And this was a lot of fun. We talked about the creator economy. We talked about Creator Cabins and talked about John's history, how he came to be where he is now with this new venture. And just a lot about the creator economy and I guess the potential that it has and the trajectory of where it's going. So if that's something that interests you, you're going to love this episode. And I had a blast as always. Maybe a little bit more this time, but still, I always love doing this. And thank you for your support each and every week for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. So without further ado, let me introduce this week's guest. Here is Jonathan Hillis. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Jonathan, for coming on the podcast. I heard you. It's so funny. Usually, the majority of people I have on is people that I've maybe read their book, or I've seen them on a documentary, or I've been found them on Twitter. But I just randomly popped on in a room in Clubhouse, and I heard you and Sahil. And I'm not and we can get into Clubhouse a little bit later. I have mixed emotions about Clubhouse, but it was one of the best. I think it was like 45 minutes that I've heard in a while. It was almost like a high level podcast. And as soon as they finished, I looked you up online. I was like, all right, let me find this guy because I really want to talk to him. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah, that was a fun conversation, and I feel the same about Clubhouse. I think it's a cool platform. Right now there's a lot of interesting folks and conversations happening. But yeah, I do wonder, as everyone gets vaccinated and the weather gets nicer in the summer, if they're going to be able to continue having as much engagement.
Yeah, we might as well just get into it now. But I the way I feel about it is this: everything is gearing towards um performing or being available at the time that I want it, right? Where before if I wanted to watch a show when I was young, I would have to, Thursday night at 8 p.m. and I would have to watch it right then and there. Otherwise, it's gone. And now it's Netflix is on my own time, YouTube is on my own time, the podcasts are on, everything's on my time. And this is the only thing that's like, and it's because it's not recorded or anything, you have to kind of show up when the thing happening. I'm like, it's such an inconvenience. And it takes up so much of your time because these rooms can go on forever. Some of these rooms go on for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. And that's just the one thing that I find a bit problematic, And on top of that, there's a whole slew of these hustlepreneurs and
Right.
rooms with people that I'm not really interested to hear. But once in a while, you'll find a conversation like the one where I heard you and Sahil, and that's just a golden nugget. That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you said about the kind of live aspect and how that makes it more challenging. I was actually just talking to another founder that I work with today. Her name's Anna Gott, and she has started what I think is one of the most magical communities on the internet right now. It's called Interintellect, and it's these live discussions about a wide range of topics. And something that she was talking about that I thought was really interesting is the analogy between interintellect and television. And she said the same thing you said, right? That the hard part about these live events is that they only happen once. They're not recorded. You have to show up, and it feels a lot like TV did 30 years ago, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh man, I have to like put this into my schedule. What I think though is interesting about that, and this maybe gets at sort of the difference between two types of clubhouse rooms. One type of clubhouse room is a discussion that's really just happening between a couple people, and then there's like thousands of people listening, and you can get some great discussions, right, where you've got like Elon Musk pulls up the GameStop CEO on stage and is out, and like that's incredible.
Yeah.
But it's not interactive, and so it doesn't really feel like it needs to be live. It could just as easily be a podcast that you listen to later. The clubhouse conversations that I think are actually more magical, if you can find the right ones, are the small group discussions where you've got just a handful of people. You can pop in, and it's actually engaging. You actually can participate in the discussion. And what Anna, the founder of Internet, said to me today is that she thinks that's the next television. That most content will be consumed on your own whenever you want, but if you want to have this sort of like small group engaging direct interactive conversation, that is going to emerge as this thing that of course still needs to happen in real time, and as a result is going to take on some of the same dynamics that television took on when it first came out.
I mean, that's fascinating. I guess the funny thing about Clubhouse is audio has kind of been ruled out. Even if you look at Apple, right? They haven't really invested in their podcasting platform. They've kind of put that to the side. As a podcaster, their analytics is horrific. It's pretty much non-existent. It's still in beta. And I mean, we're in 2021. It's ridiculous. So I
That's
feel
crazy.
like audio has not really been invested in right now, because I don't know if it's because Spotify has ramped it up, or Clubhouse, or now there's Locker Room, right? There's all, and now it seems like everyone kind of is jumping on the bandwagon of Clubhouse, and everyone's trying to make a version of that, right? Twitter, Slack, all these different
Right.
companies are like, we're going to incorporate that into whatever we're doing. Again, the only thing I feel about Clubhouse, and in the beginning, I was so excited about it. I thought it was brilliant. You know, I was the one of the chief um, supporters of it.
Yeah.
And after being on it for a while, I think, like you said, there are not everyone. I'm not interested in what everyone has to say. I'm interested in what
Right.
specific people have to say, and that's why I follow certain people. But when you have a room where there's 50 people have the option of talking, you lose me. Like you said, I much prefer the smaller rooms where it's you and maybe two, three, four other people talking, and they really have benefit, versus people who just want to be heard rather than having actually something to say.
Totally. Yeah. And that's a great point about the kind of other benefit of small rooms is um, the promoters are not going to be in those rooms because there's no one to promote to, right?
Yeah.
There's no shilling in a room of 10 people talking about something. It's just an actual conversation. And there's a guy I know named Hadar Dor who started this clubhouse club that I'm a part of called Societech, and he just managed to pull together a bunch of interesting product managers and other folks from the technology industry, and we just hop on every week and talk about a new topic of the week related to technology and society. And they're fascinating conversations, right? It's the sort of thing that you get normally sitting around a dinner table. And I'm excited to get back to the dinner tables, but I do also think there's a place for those sort of small live discussions to continue happening online.
Yeah. Have you found that have people reached out to you since you've had that clubhouse room conversation with Sahil?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was I ended up with a whole lot of Twitter followers and Clubhouse followers as a result of that conversation. But yeah, I really attribute that to Sahil and the community that he's built and curated. I think the work that he's doing is fascinating and groundbreaking, and I think that he's looking at the same venture funding models and companies that everyone else is looking at, but he's got a fresh take. And I think that the sort of things he's doing now that seem, that are innovative and new are things that are going to be much more mainstream, in the next decade.
Yeah. And I think I feel like I was shitting on Clubhouse a little bit too much. So let me praise it as well. I think the nice thing about it is the immediacy of it, right? Like you and Sail, boom, you jump on a room, get into this great conversation, 1,000 people listen, X amount of them go follow you and reach out. And that part, and that's a little bit harder to do, let's say in a podcast form where I have to reach out, we have to set up a date. That's a little bit more rigid in that sense. This is a little bit more free flowing. And hey, if it doesn't work out, it's not recorded. No one missed out or anything. It was a 30-minute conversation that maybe didn't end up well, but has a lot of upside if it did go well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that serendipity is a lot of the magic of the internet. Right?
Yeah.
This is also what you see on Twitter, is that it's those connections that get made that you weren't expecting is where all the value comes from. And the kind of downside of that is it means you have to sit around hanging out, waiting for the serendipity to happen sometimes.
Yeah.
But when it does, it's magical.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so I wanted I wanted to get to Clubhouse later. I'm glad we got that out the way, but maybe give us a little bit of a background about yourself before we get into what you currently do. Just run us up to speed so the listeners can get a better feel for who you are and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is John Hillis. I am currently working on a lot of projects to try to increase the GDP of the creator economy. And the probably biggest of those projects right now is creator cabins. I'm sitting right now in the first creator cabin, and we've got the second cabin is made out of shipping containers. It's built right now out in California. Is going to be delivered in about a week and a half here, and then we would really love to have a lot of online independent creators come out and spend time here in the Texas Hill Country, about 45 minutes outside of Austin, and start bringing some of that serendipity of the internet that we were talking about into real life. And so, that's one piece of the puzzle. But when I take a step back and I look at the creator economy, I think having these sort of in-person spaces is going to be an important part of the infrastructure. I also think funding models are going to be a really important part of the infrastructure. This is part of what I love about what Sahil is doing. He's taking a different look at it, and he's saying this venture capital model doesn't really work for creators. So similarly, I've started the Creator Fellowship, which is an income sharing agreement for creators. I'm trying to find other ways to build some of the infrastructure that can support the creator economy. My background is in product. I spent about 6 years at Instacart, where I led product teams and particularly led the shopper product team, which helped me think a lot about the future of work and independent, flexible online work, and how we can unlock the ability for a whole lot more money to be created for people that are independently earning online.
Well, that's awesome. How was it working for Instacart? Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. I loved it. Instacart was a really transformative career experience for me, and I really believe in the product and the people that are working there. And I think I went there with the intention to learn how great companies and great products are built. But I also went with the intention to take that knowledge and one day go do my own thing. So it felt like the right time for me to leave and take some of those learnings and go off on my own.
So you said you want to increase the GDP of the creator economy. Can you expand, I guess, what that means and what exactly is the creator economy for some people who may not fully understand?
Yeah. So, I think the creator economy has become a bit of a buzzword over the past 6 months. And, when I started working on it, we weren't calling it that. I think there were still a bunch of names people were throwing around, but it seems like that's the one people have settled on. I think all it really means is people earning money independently online by building personal monopolies. So let me unpack that a little bit. What I mean by that is, first of all, I think that the most important part of it is that it's individuals that are going directly to their customers. They're saying, I don't need to be a part of a company to make money. I can do it myself. And I think the important distinction then between the, say, creator economy and gig economy is that the creator economy is about building a personal monopoly. It's figuring out what you do that's unique that nobody else can do, whether that's creating a podcast or writing code or starting a newsletter, or whatever, and figuring out the unique thing that you can contribute to the world and find your true fans. And I wrote a blog post about the sort of like 6 levels of the creator economy. So if you think about, if you as an individual, you have a goal of saying, I want to make, let's say, $100,000 a year. Okay, how can you do that? You can make $1 a year from 100,000 people. Okay, that's sort of like an influencer type thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're monetizing through micro payments or ads or something like that. On the other end of the spectrum, you can say, okay, I want to make $100,000 a year from one entity, which is basically just a job, right? That's like a normal job. And then there's every level in between, right? And so you can think about what are the business models, what are the types of products that make sense if I'm going to have a community that's really small. Maybe it's only 100 people, but they're willing to pay me a lot more money because I can provide value, or maybe it's thousands of people, and so you can look at these sort of different levels of the creator economy, and there's a wide diversity of different ways that you can make money and find your audience and create the right product.
What are the other 4?
Yeah. So look, this is just a framework that I came up with. I don't think it's certainly not written in stone, and would love to continue to get feedback and develop it. But the way that I had it structured is you have the influencer economy, which is 100,000 people at $1 a year. Okay, then you have something like and that's monetized through things like ads, micropayments, affiliates. Then you have something like 10,000 people, that are paying you $10 a year. And that's kind of traditional gig economy, these transactional gigs, or things like, drop shipping or eBooks or whatever. That's like a pretty challenging competitive market. Then you have the fan economy, which is the 1,000 people that are willing to give you $100 a year. And the name here comes from Kevin Kelly's original essay on this very early on, talking about the 1,000 true fans. And this is the model that we really saw developed with things like Patreon, subscription newsletter content, that sort of thing. Then you have what Lee Jin has termed the passion economy, which is, okay, 1,000 people at $100 a year is good. What about 100 people that are willing to give you $1,000 a year? So you've really upped the ante in terms of the quality of product you have to provide to people, but you can have a much smaller audience. So this is often things like online courses, coaching, tutoring, and then the next step up, you have 10 people willing to give you $100,000 a year. And I've called this and other people have called it the indie economy. And this is things like indie consulting, niche SaaS businesses where you can maybe create software that you can sell to a company at a pretty high rate. You don't need that many customers. And then, like I said earlier, if you just want to get all of your money from one person or entity, we just call that a job.
Yeah, the least interesting out of all those.
Yeah.
There's, I'll be honest. I mean, I guess I did work a 9 to 5, but I've never worked the kind of the traditional 9 to 5. It's just not something that was ever really, I don't know. And it was never interesting to me to pursue that type of job. And it seems like whenever you hear, especially when I hear like the guru influencers, right, the hustlepreneur type, it's almost so easy for them to try to convince you to live this lifestyle that you'll always hear, oh, you have to, like 9 to 5 is synonymous with death. Like 9 to 5 is almost like the worst thing on earth that you can have. And I don't know, I have a lot of friends that have a 9 to 5 and they like it. Like when I approach them sometimes, I'm like, I have this idea. Maybe we can do this together. Like, what do you think? They're like, like I like my job. I like my 9 to 5. Yeah. So I think
there's nothing wrong
there's
with
room
it.
for, I think there's room. There's like a big gamut. There's room for everything.
Absolutely. I think I totally agree. I'm not, most people getting a paycheck every 2 weeks is like, that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stability to that. I think the difference is just that I believe in increased opportunities for flexibility. And, I think that's the thing that's really changing is for a long time, jobs were kind of the only game in town. And now you've got a whole lot more options. And for most people, they're still going to want to do the job thing. But for a lot of people, it's at least worth taking a step back and saying, hey, should I consider these other new options that didn't exist before?
It also used to be that you would have a job for life, right? Like
Yes.
you would get that one job and maybe you would have two, where now, you're switching out different jobs all the time until you find something that, that is a passion. Like now
Yeah.
it's not about making money. It's about, I want to follow my passion. I want to do something that I align with.
Yeah, and ideally you can do both, but I think that's a really good point. That the contract that people used to make with companies was, I will work for you for life, and you will provide me a job for life,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And in particular, I think Japan really epitomized this. There's some great writing about the Japanese company man, where like it doesn't, that is a real deal that you can take in Japan, where
Really.
it doesn't matter if the company doesn't need you anymore. They will keep giving you a job, even if that job is literally just like coming in and sitting at a desk in the corner for 8 hours a day, because that's the contract that you've sort of made with society. And I think the reality is that contract is changing a lot. And if we really think about the mechanics of that contract, without getting too technical here, there's an interesting economic underpinning for why that contract has changed. And companies certainly don't feel that level of commitment to people anymore, but people also don't need to feel that level of commitment to companies. And the reason is that transaction costs have fallen. So there's this guy named Ronald Coase, and he won a Nobel Prize, I believe, in the 70s for this idea. He wrote an essay called "The Nature of the Firm," and he was trying to answer the question: why do companies even exist? And that if you look at sort of traditional economic theory, it assumes there are no transaction costs, which means anybody can just do business with anyone. It doesn't cost anybody anything to do business, to make exchanges. There's no friction. And so he said, well, if that's the case, then there shouldn't be companies. Everybody should just be independent contractors. And, but companies clearly exist. Why is that? And he posited that it's because there actually are transaction costs, and because what companies can do is they can take everybody and put them in one thing and say, we'll give you a salary. And in exchange, we don't have to make a deal every time. We just tell you what to do and we can change that. And you do it. But what's interesting is now those transaction costs are actually falling very rapidly, right? So you look at something like an Uber, you look at something like an Instacart, you can open up your phone and you can look at a specific unit of work and you can say, okay, do I want this? Do I not want this? Here's what the job is. Here's how much money it pays. Accept, decline. And that is a big difference in terms of the role of the firm or the company. And that's really something that software is unlocking, that makes it so that I believe that the creator economy is going to be a lot bigger in the future as a result.
Yeah, it's democratized a lot of industries that were held up by, I guess, monopolies early on, or for a very long time at least. I think Naval said that in the future we'll all be working for ourselves essentially, and he said the information age is going to reverse the industrial age.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I've tried to do some writing about this, and I haven't really nailed down my perspective 100%. But I do think that that there's something to that, and that if you look at the industrial age and what it did to labor, a big part of it was assembly lines and this idea that you could make all the parts interchangeable, but you could also make the labor interchangeable. And as a result, that really made it so that if you wanted labor to be interchangeable, you wanted people to show up at a certain time and work a certain number of hours, and then if they couldn't show up, you could slot somebody else in the exact same thing. And the whole economy was sort of built on these ideas, and that's where things like 9-to-5s come from. And so yes, I think that we saw some of the early marketplaces starting to unbundle and atomize these units of work, but that's really where we're headed for all jobs. And that what's exciting about that is that not only does it give people flexibility, but it also allows them to build these personal monopolies to figure out what is the thing that they do best, that no one else in the world can do like they can do.
Yeah, I feel like for people outside of tech, it seems daunting sometimes. And with the rapid advance in technology, I'll be honest, I can barely keep up, right? Like there's NFTs and there's Bitcoin, and there's BitClout, and then there's it feels, and there are new ways of working, and new SaaS companies that are coming out, and new ways of changing ideas, and of buying goods, and of selling of goods, and finance. Everything has been kind of rapidly changing, and I think COVID even propelled that even more. Yeah. And I think that's why sometimes people outside of tech, and maybe people who are maybe a little bit older, maybe they don't fully understand it, they look at it as, oh, it's just moving too fast. But it is. But even for me, I try to keep up with the trends. I'm like, dude, there's just it feels like sometimes it's too much too quick. Where before I fully understand what the one thing is, there's two new things that come out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think we're in a real Cambrian explosion moment, and I think crypto is a great example of this. We went from kind of the early crypto cycles where Bitcoin was the story, right? And then there
Yeah.
was ETH, and now there's NFTs, but there's also all of these other things going on. It's not just one thing anymore. Now there's a whole Cambrian explosion of other ways people are starting to use these technologies, and it's hard to keep up with. And I think that one of the things that we're really going to have to figure out as individuals and collectively, as economies, is how do we make sure that people can continue to stay up to date with the changes, because it ties exactly into what you were saying, right? We're not getting into one job for 40 years anymore. We're changing careers sometimes multiple times a day, and if you're going to do that, like you really do have to keep up. I find that exciting. I come from the technology background where I'm a real optimist about this sort of thing. Where I think it's really cool to stay up to date with these new things, but also totally understand that it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people.
No, I love it. And now, like you said, nowadays there's not one job. Everyone has 3 or 6 or 9 or 15 different revenue streams, and they're doing podcastings and YouTubes, and they're opening up, I don't know, the rolling funds and whatever it is they're doing. Everyone's doing multiple things, and they're wearing multiple hats because they understand that technology allows us this leverage to essentially leverage our skills, our goods, our services, right? And maximize that throughout the entire world. It's not just like, I'm not just selling in New York City. I can sell anywhere, and people can listen to my voice everywhere. I have people, in countries I can barely pronounce that listen to the podcast, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that diversification of revenue streams is a really important part of it, right? As technologies are changing quickly, you need to be diversified, because that's how you stay resilient to change. That's how you make sure that if one platform changes, you have the ability to port things over to another, or if one revenue stream dies, okay, you've got something else going on. And to your point earlier, that's not going to be for everyone, right? There some people who just want to show up at the 9 to 5 and get the consistent paycheck, but that's not as safe as it used to be, because the company also, doesn't, everything else is changing around them. And so if you don't do that sort of diversification, you can really end up in a high risk spot in a way that didn't used to be the case.
Yeah. No, look, I understand people want security. Doing something on your own is not the secure route, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, as you know, as any kind of entrepreneur knows, in the beginning, it's going to be rough. You're not going to see a lot of income, and you just gotta, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you
Yeah.
just
Well, and let's talk
gotta
about
keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you do have to optimize for the long term. That is really hard for people, right? Because they have payments they need to make now. They have needs, especially if they have a family, or these sorts of things. They can't wait around for a year to start making money. And this is why I think funding models are so important. This is why I think that innovation in how people get paid is going to be the most important part that we need to figure out in the next couple of years for the creator economy. Because you look at the American dream of kind of the 20th century of home ownership. Well, that didn't really start to become a thing until financial structures were in place that allowed people to get 30-year fixed rate mortgage loans. Before that, only wealthy people, for the most part, owned homes. And that American dream was unlocked by the financial model. And so I think that a similar thing is going to happen with the creator economy. If you think about owning your own business as sort of the next American dream, what we really need is new innovative structures for income sharing, for crypto-based stuff that enables crowdfunding in interesting ways, for these sort of models that can let people see some of the financial benefits of what they're doing sooner in the cycle.
So I will quote you because I thought I actually read that blog post. Building a profitable, sustainable remote business that can run from anywhere, scales nicely, and print money is the new American dream. I love that line. I thought that was great.
Yeah, thank you. And I think either that is a paraphrased or a quote maybe from Tyler Tringus, via David Perel, and they've both written some great stuff about this. Tyler is the general partner at a fund called Earnest Capital, and I'm an LP in the fund, full disclosure, but I really believe in what they're doing, and it's an income sharing based model. Right? He's looking at this and saying, okay, this venture capital model doesn't really work for people who want to build these businesses, and it's not even necessary anymore. Now it's so easy, to spin up a server, right, or to get access to SaaS tools that even 10 years ago would have cost a whole lot of money and a whole lot of development to make happen. Now these things are accessible in a way where you really can scale a business as an individual.
Yeah. Even podcasts. I mean, doing a podcast, from what I've heard 15 years ago, was a headache. It was not an easy feat. And nowadays, I can start a podcast in literally 5 minutes. I download Anchor. I don't have to have a mic. I mean, mic is just for added quality, and I can talk and put it out there, and I have a podcast. I mean, it's literally that easy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about creator cabins. How, when did that idea start to brew, and when did you start to? I'm assuming COVID is probably a big factor, but when did this start to come to fruition?
Yeah, so it's certainly a business that I think has been validated in a lot of ways by COVID, but the idea predates that, and I think with any entrepreneur, it's probably possible to trace the origin story to some extent back to your childhood, and for me, the first job I ever wanted as a kid was I wanted to be an architect. And then I found out that you have to go to school for like 10 years and do apprenticeships and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, maybe not that.
Yeah.
But I always, kept that in the back of my mind, and had talked with my, dad about building a cabin in the woods. And it was this idea that stayed latent. And then, actually a couple years ago, this would have been in 2018, right around this time, actually in April. My boss at Instacart, one of my mentors, and just one of the best product people I've ever had the privilege of working with, David Hahn, looked at me and he said, "Man, you are burnt out. You've been running, the sprint for the marathon, and you got to take a break and go sit on a beach somewhere." And so I know this is like the most stereotypical thing, but I bought a ticket to Thailand like the next week and went to this like remote island off the southeast coast of Thailand, and tried to get as off the grid as I could, and sat on this beach and thought about what I wanted to do with my life, and tried to kind of pull together some of these different strands. And what I realized there was that there was this different lifestyle that I was seeing some people in Thailand live, and I had some friends back home that were doing, that I thought was going to be much bigger in the future, which was this sort of digital nomad type lifestyle. But I think there's a version of it that is going to become much more mainstream. And this was obviously rapidly accelerated by COVID, where people are working remotely more, and they may want to go back to the office, they may not. I think different people want to do different things, but at least a decent portion of people will want to have the flexibility to live and work where and when they want to work. Yeah. And Creator Cabins is all about that. It's a remote set of cabins in the Texas Hill Country for remote workers and independent online creators. And I think the idea is to take the serendipity of these sort of internet connections, bring them into the real world, and give people a place to connect. And then I think the secret long-term plan is to have more of these sites and to have it be almost a decentralized city. And this won't be just creator cabins. I hope a whole lot of people will start building these sort of communities around the world, and that people will then be able to kind of travel from place to place. And in the same way that right now, or maybe 5 or 10 years ago, if you were a young, ambitious person, you had to go to a New York or a San Francisco if you really wanted to be around a community of like-minded people who were young and ambitious and working on the big next thing. I want the next city to not be a city at all, but to be a whole network of these places where we can meet online and then get together in person.
So do you think we're gonna reach a point, and I mean maybe we already are, but that before, right, like you said, you would have to be either in California or New York, and those were kind of like the two big hubs. And COVID essentially started to spread people all across the country where they realized, wait, why am I paying this premium and I'm not actually receiving anything? And I'm living in a 1 bedroom and now I have to work from home and I'm starting to go crazy and I need space. I need to go somewhere. And we started seeing people, right, move to Miami, move to Texas. Why I guess I guess it's two questions. Why Texas do you think has become so popular? I don't know if it's with state income tax or because it's a little bit more free. I'm not sure exactly what. Maybe you can enlighten us. And I guess the second question is, do you see more of these type of communities? Whereas before you would see maybe like a WeWork, right, where New York had I don't know how many WeWorks, but it was a shit ton of WeWorks. Now an outdoors WeWorks, kind of like what I not exactly what you're doing, but something similar start to spring up across all these different hubs across the US.
Yeah. So, I think the answer is a resounding yes. I think that even the question of, what's the next big tech hub? Oh, is it Miami? Is it Austin? Is it San Francisco again? Like, I think that's just the wrong question because I think the answer is all of the above and more,
Yeah.
right? I think we're at the point now where the internet is not just something that like weird people over here are doing. It's a thing everyone is doing, of course, and software similarly is it's not an industry. It's all industries
Hmm.
are going to be empowered by software, and so the same thing's going to happen with cities. There's not one tech hub. Everywhere is going to need to be a tech hub in the future. And so, I think we're already starting to see the beginning of that. We're going to see a whole lot more of it. In terms of why Texas, I can give a personal answer and I can speculate a little bit on why other people are moving here. I grew up in Austin. I was born and raised here. And I think it's just a great place to grow up. And when my wife and I were starting to think about where we wanted to raise a family in the future, there's a lot of great reasons to be in the Austin area. There's beautiful nature. There's good weather for most of the year. There's a lot of live music and arts and a strong culture, great people. You walk down the streets and people wave at you and say hi, which like never happens to me in California. Um, and
It doesn't happen in New York either.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, it's just a different vibe. And I really like that. I like that kind of community. And I think it's going to be a great place to be and to spend time and also potentially to raise a family. I think that's the sort of thing people are looking for. The other stuff. Look, the state governments, it matters. I'm sure some people are kind of optimizing for taxes, but I don't think that's like really the story, right? I do know that it's a lot easier to build here. I can tell you that if I wanted to start creator cabins in the Bay Area, it'd be nearly impossible. And here, it's quite easy. We can build a new cabin, pretty much other than like submitting a form for the septic permit and for the electricity hookup. The government's not asking a lot of questions and
Yeah.
requiring a lot of forms and stuff, right? They're just like, okay, cool, you do your thing, and I think that is going to allow for a lot of growth and for housing supply to meet the demand in a way that I appreciate and wish we could see in places like California as well.
Well, I think this could actually be a massive boon for certain places. It could like revitalize economies, right? I see this almost as a missed opportunity for certain cities that need these young tech, whatever tech is, because tech is everything is tech now, but these young tech people to come in, enthusiastic, build communities there. And like they could really, if if certain cities find ways, I don't know, maybe they even build a creator cabin or they incentivize them by whatever it is. I don't know what it could be, but there are, because you don't need to be in proximity to your work anymore, right? You can just be anywhere. And instead of, let's say you're making a 200K or 150K a year, and before you were living in San Francisco and you were spending 150K, meaning you're making
Right.
nothing. Now you can make 150 and spend 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you just have to find the right place.
Yeah, no, and look, I think it's healthy. It's healthy competition between states. This is,
Yeah.
I think, a big part of why the United States was set up as this federal system, so that we would see innovation happening, between states. And I certainly think we're already starting to see this play out. Before we started, I think you mentioned Tulsa. Tulsa is a place that I'm keeping an eye on, because I think they're starting to say, I think they're even doing some sort of direct payments or grants for people in technology jobs that are interested in moving there. We may see more of that sort of thing. The mayor of Miami, as we've all seen, is just this
He's a
one
superstar.
man powerhouse of like, literally, Miami did not have some big flourishing tech scene, and he's trying to tweet it into existence. And I think that model, is actually something that we're going to see a whole lot more of from politicians in the future. More proactive engagement with online communities, to try to recruit the best and the brightest.
Yeah. What he's done is remarkable. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen any other politician use Twitter as efficiently and as smart as he's been using it in the past, 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, well, and for good, right? I
For
think
good, yeah.
the unfortunate reality here is that I don't want to get too much into politics, but I think our former president definitely figured out how to use Twitter effectively, but not in such a constructive way, perhaps, right?
Un-
So,
That's
but
an understatement, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so what I love about what Francis Suarez is doing is, the tweet that sparked all of this was him asking, "How can I help?"
Mhm.
Right? And that's the magic of the internet, is if you're willing to go and find the right communities and ask, "How can I help?" Really great things can happen. And I think that's the sort of energy we're going to see from a whole lot more politicians in the future.
Okay, you're optimistic. That's I like that.
Yeah, I'm an unabashed
Fair enough.
optimist.
Yeah. No, that's good. I just don't have as much faith in our politicians, but I hope I get proved wrong.
Well,
You
they're
know?
going to have to, right? So I saw a really interesting article. I think David Perel was tweeting about that, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but in I want to say Brazil, or certainly a South American country, they're starting to see YouTubers that are getting elected to public offices
Oh,
by
really?
overwhelming margins. And I think in this particular case, some of their, I certainly don't know much about the politics of South America, but I think some of them are maybe not politicians I would personally agree with. But I think the trend is interesting, and I think that the reason why we're going to see more of this is not because politicians want to do it, or because we want them to do it. It's like, that's what's going to work. That's how they're going to get elected in the future. If they don't have an online following, they're going to have a lot of trouble competing with people who do.
Yeah, yeah. No, 100%. They're just some of them are just hopeless. But
Yeah.
I do hope that good ones rise to the top, and maybe it'll be a good filtering out process, and we will see who's more authentic, who actually cares, and the bad ones just maybe hopefully get weeded out. But
Yeah, and look, I think it's going to go both ways, right? We've seen this already. People with extreme political views are actually quite effective at using algorithms that optimize for engagement, and that can lead to some really dangerous places. So we need to have the right checks and balances in place. But I really do believe that the long arc of moral progress or technological progress does bend towards justice, or at least towards better things.
yeah, yeah. I think I agree with that. I think we might be seeing a little blump in that arc right now, a little dent.
Absolutely. Yep.
But like you said, if you look at it, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? If I look at the overarching over decades, it'll still probably, keep going up and keep improving.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that sort of a long-term view is actually a very helpful way to live your life, because if you get too caught up in the day to day or week to week or month to month or even year to year, you're going to get swept up in the sort of feelings of the moment. And if you're willing to take a step back and really think, not what do I want tomorrow, but what do I want a decade from now, or what do I think the world is going to look like a decade from now? So few people are willing to do that from first principles that it becomes a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask you a little bit more about creator cabins because first of all, I love the idea, but I love hearing how people build things, and I also love hearing about their struggles
Yeah.
because that's real, right? Like struggles are real. Struggles are part of building something. And I guess what have been some of the obstacles that you faced so far, or things that maybe threw you off that you weren't expecting?
Oh my God, yeah. So many things to talk about here. I mean, I would not recommend, custom home construction for the faint of heart. Um, I would not recommend working with, novel materials or processes like remotely constructed, shipping container homes for the faint of heart. I mean, there's a great quote I heard recently that if you're on the bleeding edge, you're going to bleed. Um, and I certainly feel like I'm on the bleeding edge, and I've done some bleeding. One just like quick but very specific story or example here is just up the road at this new site where we're putting in the cabin. I've been working on all the infrastructure, getting the foundation and the well and the water lines and electricity and all at the septic, all this stuff ready for the container delivery. And I've learned a tremendous amount through that process. I've certainly made some mistakes. Right now, I've got a big trench sitting up there. I've got about 170-foot trench in the ground. And there's an electric line running through it right now. There's a high speed internet line running through it because we're going to bring in some custom internet infrastructure to make sure we have high speed bandwidth here. And I need to figure out the water. And as everyone knows, about whatever that was, a month or 6 weeks or whatever ago, there was a huge winter storm in Texas, and it just made everything a whole lot more complicated.
That was such a freaky thing that just
It
happened,
was
right?
wild. Yeah, it was totally wild. I've like I said, born and raised here in Austin, never seen anything like it.
Wow.
I was out here when it started at the cabins, and I got so freaked out by the weather, that I drove into Austin to be at my parents' place because I didn't know what it was going to be like out here, and I also was worried about them in Austin.
Yeah.
And it ended up being really good that I was with them. So they lost water and had some pipes burst and stuff like that. But it meant that not only did we have some damage out here that I needed to deal with when I got back out, it also meant that it's impossible to get plumbers or even plumbing equipment anywhere in Central Texas right now. And so I've got this trench in the ground. I can't find a plumber to put a pipe in from the well to the house. I need to get this pipe in and this trench filled before the cabin gets delivered in a week and a half, so they can drive over the trench and set the cabin on the foundation. And can't find the equipment, can't find the pipes, can't find a plumber, and I'm like, I'm just going to have to figure out how to do this thing myself. So I spent literally hours yesterday watching YouTube tutorials on trench backfilling and pipe diameters and types of pipe, and I mean just all this stuff I had no idea I was ever going to have to learn about. But that's just
How good are those videos though, right? Like YouTube
they're
videos are
amazing.
great.
Amazing. Yeah, I love the internet. I love YouTube. You can go on and like there's, dozens of people that are doing these like crazy videos on specific pipe
Yeah.
trench backfill. I mean, it's just like it's incredible what you can
And they're
learn on.
good. It's
They're
not
good.
crap. It's good.
No, there's high quality content from professionals walking you through every piece of it. The guy talking about the pipe types, and the guy talking about the backfill materials, and I mean it's amazing. But that's my week, right?
Yeah.
I'm like I'm trying to figure out how to get this freaking pipe in and trench filled before the cabins show up, and it just has to get done.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in construction for a few years when I was younger, and building essentially houses for other people. And look, it's a hassle, man. Like I commend you. It's not easy. It's not
Yeah,
easy.
you
There's
know,
so many logistics, so many problems, so many different people you have to talk to, and then once you think you figured it out, there are new problems that come. It's yeah.
yeah, no, I'm very grateful for my background as a product manager because I think that's somewhat like being a general contractor on a
Mhm.
construction project, and so that's been very helpful. But I think the construction industry is sort of the original gig economy. It's all contractors, and that's cool because you can piece projects together with a bunch of different people. And I think I've actually learned some about how to think about the future of gig work from doing this project. But it also means, man, they don't have good software systems. So, people are flaky in the hill country right now. There's tons of stuff being built out. And so they have plenty of work, and it's hard to get anyone to do anything. But I'm just learning a lot about it. I mean, I've been enjoying getting my hands, dirty and starting to not only learn about the specifics of each of these trades, but actually do some of it. I think, my wife, who's out here working on this project with me, is maybe starting to have some regrets about giving me the thumbs up to do it all. But I think it's going to feel really great in a month,
Yeah.
when it's all done.
It's crazy. We had some plumbing issues here a few weeks back, and we're in New England, so other side of the country. And the plumber comes, he looks at everything, and he gives us a quote, and I look at the quote, I'm like, it seems excessive. He was like, well, right now because what's happening in Texas, PVC pipes are like triple the price. And I just never put I never connected the dots that a plumbing job in New England is somehow connected to what's happening in Texas, I thought was kind of wild.
Yeah, no, global supply chains are crazy right now. I mean, you look at, all
Evergreen.
the fun we were having, yeah, with Evergiven last week, right? Like the best Twitter memes I've seen in a while, but
Oh, they're
that
great.
has real impacts on global supply chains and
Yeah.
makes it so it's hard to get materials.
No, no toilet. I keep saying, just use Japanese toilets. You don't need toilet paper. It's a waste. It's a waste. It's just such a waste. I was in Japan 2 years ago. I couldn't believe this is not what the whole world was using. I'm like, I don't know why. It's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Um, do you envision what you're doing companies do? So let's say, take whatever tech company, let's say Gumroad, just as an example, right? And they're like, you know what? Like we like the office model, but it's outdated. Let's go and build our little community somewhere in wherever,
Yeah.
Colorado, and bring all our employees there and create a little mini community for ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's very insightful. One little side project I have is I've been writing some science fiction, and I do it partially because I'm interested in possibly writing a novel, but also because I think it's just a good way to explore where things could go in the future. And I started writing some sci-fi about this idea of what does this look like when companies start creating these like semi-sovereign territories where they've got, and I think we've seen some of this kind of thing historically with like company towns, and that can go down some pretty dangerous paths in terms of companies controlling all the aspects of people's lives. And I think we'll need to be on the lookout for that. But I also think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities for innovation there. And I think that one area where I'd like to see creator cabins go in the future is not just to have these creator communities where individuals can come and meet other people, but also have them be potential retreat spaces. So in the same way that a a company used to do offsites, where you'd get away from the office and go out somewhere. Now I think companies are going to be, maybe remote first, but do on-sites where once a quarter they want to get together in person for a week and do, quarterly planning or something like that. And I'd love to have spaces like that where people could come together and do these sort of retreats.
I mean, I feel like what is beautiful about creator cabins is you combine like all these different movements. It's like the tiny house movement, and then it's the digital nomad movement, and then it's kind of like a we work and a we live type of situation, and then it's also the creator economy. There's just so many different things that go into it. So I just think it's really cool.
I appreciate that. It's funny because it really has played out that way, but um, those weren't the pieces I was thinking about, back on that little island in Thailand in 2018. And so, yeah, it's funny how the world sometimes develops in ways that, create opportunities you didn't even realize you were pursuing at the time.
What island was it?
Yeah. Oh man. So I went to a bunch of different ones. I tried to avoid all the kind of big touristy ones. So I was all on the off of the. Let's see, that would have been the south western edge of Thailand, where it gets kind of narrow.
Yeah.
And there's beautiful karst, pillars coming out of the ocean.
Yeah.
These amazing sand beaches. So Konai was the one that I actually was on when I had the idea. It's a tiny island. I mean, there's like a couple places to stay. Hardly anyone ever goes there. It's like not a common destination. There's no real infrastructure outside of like two or three kind of places with some like shacks you can stay in. But that was part of the inspiration, right? It was like, how could we take this model, right, that's happening on this island, and bring this to other places? I also really enjoyed my time on Koh Lipe. I think it's either the or one of the furthest south islands that's still part of Thailand before you get to Malaysia. And man, if you want to see the development happening in some of these developing countries, there's maybe I can't think of a sort of better poignant and poetic example than the island of Koh Lipe, where it's this tiny island, out in the middle of the ocean, but you've got like a third of the island that's still totally undeveloped, nothing there. Then you go from one street over from just a completely undeveloped street, dirt road with like jungle on both sides. You go one street over and you're on walking street, and it's this tourist central, with all these shops and everything going on, scuba diving and restaurants and all this stuff. And then you go one street or two streets over from there, and you're suddenly in this little village of this native community that has been living on these islands and was sort of the original pirates of the Ottoman Strait, and has like now settled into a couple of these little islands, and they're all jutting up against each other, and it's just crazy to see how quickly things are changing right now.
Thailand is amazing. I've been there twice, and it's one of those places. Personally, I feel like when you go there, because travel, if you do it right, it's supposed to change something, right? Like you're not just, oh, this was a beautiful place, then you go back and how was it? Oh, it was really nice. You went there for a week. Like ideally, you want to have an experience. You want to come back, change just a little bit. And I feel like Thailand did that for me both times. And I did spend like quite a long time. Like first time, I think I went there for 3 weeks. Second time I went there for, I think it was just under 2 months. So it's unbelievable. It's an amazing place.
Do you have any favorite islands or spots?
Koh Phi, which again I know it's touristy, but I loved it. Koh Phi, I think it's pronounced if I'm correct. I honestly half the time I spent on just training. I was in like a Muay Thai camp, so cool. that was like a month of that time, and then The second time, I went up to the north, Chiang Mai and Pai. I thought Pai was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And that's like the beauty of, you have like these beautiful islands in the south, and then you go north and it's jungle. So and then in the middle, right, you have like the city, which is this bustling city, and it's really got everything, and you can find nature and be disconnected, and you can also find ways to lose your wallet and phone in a in a bar somewhere,
Yeah.
getting really drunk. Yeah. On a beer that doesn't have the exact amount of alcohol percentage on it for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got everything.
Yeah. What's the Leo is like the big beer there?
Chang, Leo, what else do
Yeah.
they have?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
They have a few, yeah. And I think Chang, they don't put the percentage of alcohol on it because it varies. So you're like, all right, let's see what it let's see what it is today.
That's funny.
Yeah. Um, do you think, as far as our ability to broadcast has never been bigger and easier, obviously, connection with our audience has never been more direct. And it seems like for the first, I don't know, for the first decade or so of this creator economy, it was mostly free content, right? Like everything was free. And now it seems like we're shifting, and it seems like it's always this monopoly thing. It's just like there'll be a couple, and then like everyone kind of hops on the bandwagon, right? Now Twitter is discussing this, and there's paywalls for everything, and we're moving away from this unsustainable way of just having everything for free. Do you think do you think people, I guess, are going to be okay with paying for so much content? Because if you follow a lot of different people, now everyone's a brand, right? Everyone's Nike, everyone's Adidas. And if I'm following 500 people on Twitter and another 200 on Clubhouse, another 500 on whatever it is, Instagram, and everyone's a brand and everyone is pay for content, is that going to be a problem, or how do you see this playing out, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it is the early days. My best inspiration here is often to go look at some of the earliest thinkers and writers about these sort of questions. So if you look at like the late '90s, early 2000s, you've got folks like Clay Shirky and Kevin Kelly who were writing a lot about this stuff. The Thousand True Fans is sort of one of the seminal Kevin Kelly pieces on this. Clay Shirky did Here Comes Everybody and was talking about sort of how some of these things might play out. A lot of those guys were adamant that micropayments were going to be a thing, and then we went through this whole phase where it was all advertising based. But I think things are actually coming back around to how some of these earlier internet folks were thinking things would play out. And there's a great framework for this from Patrick Riviera, who's at a crypto company called Mirror, who I was just talking to recently. Yeah. And he talks about kind of Web 1.0 is about links and just the basic connections between web pages. 2.0 is about social and likes and sort of making the connection via social content. And then 3.0, that the argument goes is about these sort of economic connections, and a lot of people think that's going to be powered by crypto, and I think there's a very compelling case to be made for that crypto unlocks some of the capabilities to do things like micropayments in a way that hasn't been feasible before, though there's certainly a lot more work that needs to be done for us to get there. I think the answer is actually just all of the above. So, it's not that, and this goes back to the kind of 6 economies of online creators. We're not losing ads, right? Their ads are not disappearing as a business model, right? They're still going to be around. We're just gaining more layers to the stack and more ways for creators to monetize and more ways for people to pay for content. And so I think you'll see all of the above, right? People are you have to build an audience. And if you want to build an audience, you've got to start out by probably providing free content or providing a compelling reason, for people to know who you are and to subscribe to your thing. And so we'll still see free content. We'll still see the kind of like influencer end of the spectrum where people are wildly popular and can pretty easily monetize through things that look more like ads or affiliates. But then we're also seeing this new exciting place in between where the sort of micropayment type models or the even sort of future evolutions of the kind of Patreon-y type models are becoming more common. Look, how much tolerance are people going to have for these things? I don't think they'll subscribe to a whole lot of different creators, but I don't think they need to. I think that's the magic of this, and that's the real insight of 1,000 True Fans is you don't need to go find a million people to give you a couple bucks. You really just need, say, 1,000 or even 100 people who really like your stuff, and that's why it's so important as a creator to build in one of these hyper specific niches where you're going to be able to find the small group of people who are the ones who are going to pay for your content.
Yeah, yeah. I think if when we were talking about ads, other than YouTube, there's not really a place where ads just, again, this is off the top of my head, but I can't think of any other place where there's ads that are being put on your content and you are generating income from that. And what it seems like the direction and what everyone is doing is now you can, and maybe this is through crypto, but you will be able to monetize everything, right? Because certain people, the big ones have platforms everywhere. And then the rest of us kind of, if we're lucky, we have one big platform and then we're trying to kind of scrambling with the rest of them. Like some people are really big on Twitter, but there's no way to directly monetize Twitter other than maybe sending them to external links through to maybe Gumroad or to YouTube or to whatever other platform that they have that they can monetize. So I personally love this trend of being able to monetize through everything, if it's Instagram, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's very interesting. I just don't know. Yeah, I just don't know how it plays out. That's all.
Yeah, look, and I mean, I think YouTube is the clear example of kind of the winner in this like shared ad revenue model.
Yeah.
And they actually, I was reading something recently. I didn't realize this, but YouTube coined the phrase "creator economy" like 10 years
Really?
ago. When they were the first ones to say, yeah, what do we call these people? YouTubers is kind of weird. Let's call them creators. And then that kind of sat, latent for 10 years, and now it's popping back up.
Yeah.
But I think they really nailed that shared revenue model. I think we will see more of that. I believe TikTok actually is doing something similar to that for their big content creators now. And I know some other platforms have experimented with it. The other thing you don't see though is like, on an Instagram, for instance, I don't think you can directly monetize ad revenue share, but a lot of those big creators, right, as a result, what they're doing is another form of advertising that's a little more subterfuge, which is like affiliate links, which is basically just advertising. It's just a different form of it.
Yeah.
And look, I think it's an all of the above buffet. And that's why we're having this Cambrian explosion moment, because it's not just about one micropayments or ads or subscriptions or anything. It's the fact that you can do everything right now.
Yeah, it's almost too much. Like there's just there's OnlyFans and there's I don't know what else. There's the amount of platforms. It's endless, right? Like you said, TikTok. There's Snapchat. I don't know if people who are still using Snapchat, but I from what I understand, it's still popular.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife's a middle school counselor, and I believe the kids are still using Snapchat for texting that their parents won't see or something like that.
I thought they moved over to TikTok. I thought they all did the switch.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, TikTok definitely is popular. I think they're different purposes, though. It's more like TikTok's broadcast, and Snapchat is still for like texting your friends, and then the messages delete so your parents don't see them. But yeah, look, I think if you think about the Cambrian explosion, though, why I like that analogy is not only because you get this massive divergence of evolutionary paths, but also because it converges again, right? What we saw with the Cambrian, we don't have like weird underwater, whatever bugs with like 12 eyes sticking out and all this crazy stuff. Like over time, the evolutionary paths continued to evolve towards fitness functions, and you get a narrowing of and a convergence of sort of the paths that make the most sense. And so it's an exciting time. It's an overwhelming time. But what will happen, I think, is we'll start to see that convergence towards the different paths that are really what makes sense.
Yeah. It seems like everyone is kind of carving a slice, right? They're making it very niche specific. So I think locker room, what we mentioned earlier, right? That's essentially a clubhouse for sports. And that's essentially, I feel like what everyone's going to do, right? You're going to have, I don't know, Instagram for food or Twitter for, I don't know, specifically something, right? Whatever it is going to be, they're all just going to carve out niches, and everyone's going to find the niche that suits them. And then maybe there it's a little bit easier to find the specific people you want to follow because they're exactly talking about the niches that you like and they are masters in that domain.
Right. And that evolution, I think, is why communities are such an important part of the conversation, because when you get into these smaller groups of more passionate people, it's less about broadcast. It's less about, everybody following the one person who tweets the fortune cookies. And it's more about interacting with people in your little community. So, my first taste of this was as a middle school kid. I was a super nerdy kid and I was into I would go on these science Olympiad message boards and I just freaking loved it and spent all my time talking to the 20 other nerdy kids who were like geeking out about science Olympiad. And I think that sort of thing is magical for everyone involved because it's not just sitting there and listening to some broadcast thing. It's finding the small group of people who care about what you care and then talking to them about it.
Yeah.
What more do people want than that?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's what's really cool about, again, I don't, I keep flattering, but it's just a great thing. Creator Cabins is you get to do that in IRL, right? Like just sitting around, cool people, exchanging ideas, having a free flow of information, and who knows what can happen from that. It's some of the best and most interesting conversations and relationship just happen from that kind of exchange.
Yeah, no, I that's exactly why we're doing it. And you used to have to go to the New Yorks and the San Franciscos to get this kind of thing because that was the only place where there were enough people where there was like the weird group that you could find that actually match your interests. You don't need to go somewhere for that anymore. It's everywhere. So yeah, I'm very excited for that, and would love to have. I'm very explicitly right now, at least, not raising venture capital money and not, doing big marketing or any of the kind of traditional like large scale growth tactics for creator cabins. Because the way I want it to grow is I want the people listening to this podcast, or the people who follow the same people I follow on Twitter. I want those people to find out about it first. I want them to come out here. I want to meet them. I want to hang out with them, and then we can grow the community. But I'd much rather start with that really dense, interesting group of people.
So you're all self-funded so far?
Yeah, self-funded.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. I don't know if we'll be able to do that forever, but it's where I think it makes sense to start. And I'm again, like I said, I'm not opposed to venture capital. I just think it's only useful for a very specific thing.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that specific thing, I wouldn't recommend starting with it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's amazing. Like I've been wanting to do an idea for a while now, right? It is in brick and mortar. And just if I could somehow translate this idea into a digital idea, I would go run with it tomorrow. But I just have I don't want to say brick and mortar is dead. Brick and mortar is not dead, right? It's alive. It's not as good as it used to be. Perhaps it'll come back up, perhaps not, especially like just coming back from New York. I was in New York a few months ago. Not exaggerating, 30% of brick and mortar is just shut down. They completely decimated that industry. I believe it'll pick back up, but I think you have to be naive to think that in the future we're not going to be buying most of our products online.
Yeah.
That's what is happening. So, I feel like when I have ideas nowadays, if it's in brick and mortar, I tend to shelve it a little bit and think, all right, maybe this is something that if I really, really, really get excited about this, I'm going to follow. But man, you really inspired me. I have to, I have to do a double take. Maybe it's something I'll pursue. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Look, I think uh, I had a mentor of mine say one time, you should always try to zag when everyone else is zigging.
Yeah.
And I think I've ended up, like you said, at the confluence of a lot of trends right now. But I'm not trying to. And I actually think that in a lot of ways, what we're doing here is a little bit contrarian because everyone's trying to create these software businesses, and we're trying to do a physical thing. And I think the important difference is, it's not that, like you said, retail's not brick and mortar retail's not dead. Everything is going online. I think though we're still at probably last I checked, maybe only like 10% of commerce is happening online. So there's a tremendous amount of upside left. But what I like thinking about is where are the places where the physical world is actually going to be enabled by what's happening on the internet. And I think that's a space that not many people are looking at right now or investing in. And you see the slowdown of progress in the physical space. You see that it's actually more expensive and more challenging to build things in real life than it used to be. And I'd like to really question that and understand how can we not just get the kind of cool stuff happening on our phones and online, but how can we also start to get real innovation in physical infrastructure, that I think can unlock a lot of things that we're not focused on right now.
Yeah. Well, I think COVID has propelled innovation in a lot of ways, but I think it's also shown us that there are certain things that you cannot replace, right? Going into maybe like a certain store and being greeted by someone, right? Or a smell of I don't know, of food in a store, or clothing, or something that you like, whatever it is that you're into. Going
Yeah.
into those places, walking around the town, going into the different stores, making a day of it, hugging people, connecting with people. Like, as much as we want to move forward digitally, and we should, because innovation is good. We need human connection, and it's so critical to our health, to our well-being, and that's why I do feel like brick and mortar. I hope it's not going to completely die. I hope it's still going to be around, because there's certain things the virtual cannot replace. The reality will always be a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you said there is important. It's going to be about experiences,
Yeah.
right? It's about having something really magical that you can't get online. So, I spent a lot of time working on online grocery, right? And a lot of people said groceries were never going to be online. A lot of skepticism about Instacart when I started working there, and I think now people are like, okay, yeah, of course. Well, I'll buy groceries online. It's like very convenient and I don't have to think about it. But you know what? I still love going to the grocery store sometimes. And like 9 times out of 10, I just want the same things I'm going to eat every week to like show up on my front door. And that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
1 time out of 10, like I really love going to there's a place called Gus's in San Francisco, cool little local grocery store. They've got the guy who knows all the cheeses and he can tell you about the cheeses. And like, you gotta love that. Yeah. And grocery stores there's something magical about walking around and being like, man, there's like 100,000 kinds of food here. Somebody got them all in one place and put them on display. And I can just walk around and look at it all and pick whatever I want. Like, that's pretty cool too. And so I think if you can figure out how to develop those sort of cool experiences, that's how people are going to sell things in person.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if everything's going to move to virtual and there's not going to be retail, that's not a fun city to walk around in. Like you want to be able to walk within the stores. You want to be able even to like, if it's in your community, to connect with people, to know, hey, there's Brad, hey, there's Adam, hey, there's Jamie, and say hi to people and build those relationships. I hope that's never going to go away. I guess time will tell, but yeah, I think COVID has, I've seen two things happen during COVID. I've seen people that have decided that, this relationship is not for me, whether it's friend relationship, partner relationship, and they've just spent too much time together and they realized, hey, we're not good for each other. And I've seen other people realizing, look, life is uncertain, life is short. I should spend the time that I have with the people that I love, and I'm seeing this more with maybe like the little bit older generation, maybe the people around my parents' age, and they realize there's more runway behind them than in front of them, and COVID has kind of isolated them for a while. And they realize, okay, we should focus on what's important, and relationships and people that we love are what's important. So I think those are the two realizations that have happened in the past couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. There's an internet friend of mine that likes to say the three things you can't do in the metaverse are eat, sleep, and have sex. And those are all pretty good things to do with other people.
Yeah. Although they're working on the third in some sort of weird versions.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have to see. Jonathan, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, man. I had a blast.
Yeah, thank you, Roy. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah. Like I told you before we started recording, I'm thinking about coming to Texas. So
yeah, please do.
I'll definitely be in touch, man. And for the people that may think about it, where are the best places to find you, to find Creator Cabins? Where can they get more info?
Yeah, definitely. So you can get links to all my personal projects and things I'm involved in at my website, johnhillis.com, JONHILLIS.com, and check out creatorcabins.com for the cabins. We'd love to, anybody that's listening to this podcast is somebody we'd love to have out here.
All right, cool. Guys, go check it out. I love it. I may be there sometime in the summer. We'll have to see. But, hit John up. And yeah, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. I had a blast.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care, man.